A shocking return from the dead. Peter August's secret mission to save Maxie Jones. The corridors of General Hospital echo with hushed whispers and urgent footsteps, as one of Port Charles' most beloved residents fights for her life. Maxie Jones lies motionless in the intensive care unit, her vibrant spirit trapped within a body ravaged by a mysterious toxin that has left doctors baffled and her family desperate. What no one suspects is that her salvation may come from the most unlikely and supposedly impossible source, a man the entire town believes to be dead. The poisoning that shocked Port Charles. The nightmare began during what should have been a routine appearance on the Home and Heart show. Maxie, ever the professional, was demonstrating Deception's latest skincare innovation when the unthinkable happened. As she applied the cream to her face with practiced ease, something went terribly wrong. Within moments, her confident smile faded, her words became slurred, and she collapsed on live television, sending shockwaves through the studio and beyond. The contaminated cream had been laced with a sophisticated poison known that Dr. Lucas Jones and his medical team at General Hospital recognized as far more complex than any typical toxin. As Maxie was rushed into the ICU, her vital signs plummeting, it became clear that this was no accident. Someone had deliberately targeted Port Charles' ray of sunshine, and the motive seemed tied to her principled stance against Sonny Corinthos' dirty money investment in Deception. Jen Sidwell's involvement quickly became apparent to those investigating the case. Maxie had been the lone voice advocating for transparency, the only member of Deception's leadership team willing to go to the authorities about the questionable funding. Her moral courage had made her a liability that Sidwell apparently decided to eliminate through this calculated attack. A family's vigil. As days turned into weeks, the Jones Scorpio family maintained their around-the-clock vigil. Felicia Scorpio, still haunted by years of absence from her daughter's life, refused to leave Maxie's bedside except when physically forced to rest. Her husband Max stood as the family's rock, coordinating with the police investigation while providing emotional support to everyone struggling with Maxie's condition. Dr. Lucas Jones found himself in the agonizing position of treating his own cousin, watching helplessly as conventional medical interventions failed to counteract the poison coursing through Maxie's system. The toxin had been engineered with diabolical precision, designed not to kill quickly, but to create a prolonged, seemingly irreversible coma that would effectively silence Maxie forever, while maintaining plausible deniability for her attackers. Her brain activity is minimal, Lucas explained to the gathered family members, his professional demeanor barely containing his personal anguish. We're doing everything we can, but this poison, it's unlike anything we've encountered before. It's as if someone had intimate knowledge of biochemistry and designed it specifically to evade our standard treatment protocols. Whispers of the impossible. As Maxie's condition stabilized but showed no signs of improvement, an unexpected theory began circulating through Port Charles' underground networks. Could Peter August, the man everyone watched die at Felicia's hands years ago, somehow still be alive? The speculation seemed absurd after all. Anna Devane herself had witnessed Peter's final moments, had watched the light fade from his eyes, yet certain inconsistencies in recent events couldn't be ignored. The mysterious research facility where Britt Westburn had been working operated with resources and knowledge that suggested backing from someone with extensive WSB connections and unlimited funding. The poison used on Maxie bore hallmarks of the same sophisticated biotechnology that had been Peter's specialty during his criminal enterprises. Most tellingly, several residents reported strange occurrences around General Hospital security cameras, malfunctioning, unexplained power fluctuations, and the vague sensation of being watched from the shadows. These incidents had been dismissed as coincidence or the product of overactive imaginations, but they formed a pattern that suggested someone with intimate knowledge of the hospital's layout and security systems was operating in the darkness. The night that changed everything. On a moonless Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after Maxie's poisoning, the unthinkable occurred. Lucas had been working late in his office, poring over research papers and experimental treatment protocols, when the hospital's lights flickered and the backup generators kicked in. During the brief blackout, someone moved through General Hospital's corridors with the stealth and precision of a ghost. Security footage would later show nothing more than shadows and staticas. If the intruder possessed technology capable of disrupting electronic surveillance. But what happened next would be captured not by cameras, but by the subtle changes in Max's vital signs that the monitoring equipment faithfully recorded. At exactly 2:47 a.m., someone entered Maxie's room, Her heart rate, which had remained consistently low for weeks, suddenly spiked for 30 seconds before returning to its previous rhythm. More significantly, her brain activity showed a brief but dramatic surge of the kind of neurological response that suggested her unconscious mind was reacting to a familiar presence. The intruder worked quickly and silently, administering what appeared to be a carefully calculated dosage of an unknown compound directly into Maxie's feline. The injection was so precisely executed that it left no trace beyond a microscopic needle mark that would only be discovered days later during a routine examination. Within minutes, Maxie's vital signs began showing subtle but encouraging changes. Her breathing became less labored, her color improved slightly, and most remarkably, her brainwave patterns started exhibiting the complex rhythms associated with REM sleep, rather than the flat lines of deep coma. An impossible recognition. As dawn broke over Port Charles, Lucas arrived for his morning rounds to find something that defied medical explanation. Maxie's eyes were open, not the vacant, unseeing gaze of someone in a vegetative state, but the focused, aware look of someone truly conscious for the first time in weeks. "Maxie," Lucas whispered, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. "Can you hear me?" Her response was weak but unmistakable. "Peter." Peter was here. The words sent shockwaves through the medical team. Lucas immediately began a comprehensive neurological assessment while nurses contacted Felicia and Mac. But when pressed for details about her claim, Maxie's responses became increasingly vague and confused. He said he was sorry," she murmured, her eyes struggling to focus. "He said he couldn't let me die. But that's impossible, isn't it? He's been dead for years." Lucas exchanged concerned glances with the nursing staff. Hallucinations and false memories were common in patients recovering from prolonged coma's brain's way of making sense of lost time and traumatic experiences. Yet something about Maxie's certainty, the specific details she provided, felt different from typical post-coma confusion. The skeptical reception. When Felicia arrived at the hospital, her joy at seeing Maxie conscious quickly gave way to bewilderment and worry, as her daughter repeated her impossible claim. "Mom, I know how it sounds, but I swear Peter was here. I could smell his cologne, hear his voice. He gave me something to shot and told me I was going to be okay." Felicia's reaction was swift and definitive. "Sweetheart, that's impossible. Peter August is dead. I killed him myself. Anna was there who all saw him die. What you're remembering is just your brain trying to process everything that's happened to you." Mac's response was equally dismissive, though gentler in tone. "The doctor said you might experience some confusion as you recover. Memory problems, false recollections, it's all perfectly normal after what you've been through." Even Lucas, despite his medical training's emphasis on listening to patients, found himself unable to accept Maxie's account. Coma patients often create elaborate narratives to explain gaps in their memory, he explained to concerned family members. The mind needs to fill in blanks, and sometimes it creates scenarios that feel completely real to the patient. As the days passed and Maxie's physical recovery progressed remarkably quickly, far faster than medical models predicted for someone who had been poisoned, so Severlish continued to maintain her story about Peter's visit, more troubling for those who loved her. She began providing details that seemed impossibly specific for a hallucination. "He was wearing that gray suit he always liked," she told Felicia during one of their conversations, "the one with the silver buttons. And he had a scar on his hand that wasn't there before, like he'd been injured recently. He moved differently too, like he was trying not to put weight on his left leg." These details disturbed Felicia more than she cared to admit. While she wanted to dismiss them as products of Maxie's confused state, the specificity suggested either an incredibly vivid imagination or something else entirely. Lucas, meanwhile, had been discreetly investigating the circumstances of Maxie's recovery. The speed and completeness of her improvement defied medical explanation. Whatever had been used to reverse the poison's effects represented pharmaceutical knowledge and resources far beyond anything available to General Hospital's staff. "It's as if someone had intimate knowledge of the specific toxin used," he confided to Dr. Terry Randolph during a private consultation. "Not just knowledge but access to a precisely formulated antidote. Something like that would take months to develop under normal circumstances." Lingering questions. As Maxie prepared for discharge from General Hospital, her physical recovery complete, but her memories of Peter's visit unchanged. The mystery deepened rather than resolved. Security reviews had found no evidence of an intruder, yet something had clearly happened during those crucial hours. when Maxie's condition had miraculously improved. For Felicia, the situation created a disturbing cognitive dissonance. She had felt Peter's life leave his body, had watched as Anna confirmed his death, yet her daughter's unwavering certainty, combined with the medical impossibility of her recovery, suggested possibilities that challenged everything she thought she knew. What if, Maxie said quietly during their final evening at the hospital, what if Peter found a way to survive? What if he's been watching from the shadows, and when he saw I was in danger, he couldn't stay hidden anymore? The question hung in the air, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. But as they prepared to leave General Hospital behind, one thing was certain: the mystery of Maxie's recovery would continue to haunt Port Charles, leaving everyone to wonder whether the dead can truly return to protect those they love. Even if no one will ever believe it happened, the truth, whatever it might be, remains locked in the shadows of General Hospital's corridors, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself to a town that thought it had seen the last of Peter August forever. Next, we will learn about the explosive marital crisis brewing between Curtis Ashford and Portia Robinson, as their relationship implodes in spectacular fashion, potentially leaving Portia facing an uncertain pregnancy that could echo the darkest secrets of her past. The foundation of Curtis and Portia's marriage has cracked beyond repair, following a devastating confrontation that began in Portia's medical office at General Hospital. What started as another heated discussion about their ongoing relationship tensions escalated into something far more destructive when Portia delivered an ultimatum that would forever alter the trajectory of their union. Standing behind her desk with tears streaming down her face, she warned Curtis that walking away from their argument without resolution would signal the definitive end of everything they had built together. The gravity of Portia's warning was unmistakable. This wasn't merely another marital spat about trust issues or professional disagreements. This was the moment when years of accumulated resentments, secrets, and betrayals finally reached their breaking point. Curtis, still reeling from discovering Portia's involvement with Drew Quartermain's blackmail schemes regarding the Heather Weber medical records tampering, felt suffocated by what he perceived as yet another layer of deception in their relationship. The parallels to his failed marriage with Jordan Ashford were impossible to ignore. Once again, Curtis found himself married to a woman who kept crucial information hidden, who made unilateral decisions that affected both their lives, and who seemed incapable of complete honesty even when their relationship hung in the balance. The echo of his past disappointments with Jordan's secretive work and undercover operations now manifested in Portia's medical ethics violations and susceptibility to Drew's manipulative blackmail tactics. Portia's desperate gamble with Isaiah Gannon, in the aftermath of Curtis's departure from her officio walking confirmation that he was choosing his pride over their marriage. Portia found herself drowning in a cocktail of rage, abandonment, and vindictive impulses. The Brown Dog Tavern became her refuge, where she sought solace in alcohol and the sympathetic ear of Dr. Isaiah Gannon, the mysterious newcomer who had recently arrived in Port Charles alongside Lucky Spencer, following their harrowing experiences with Jen Sidwell in East Africa. Isaiah's presence in Portia's life during this vulnerable moment was no coincidence. The enigmatic doctor had been observing the marital dysfunction between Curtis and Portia for weeks, positioning himself as an understanding confidant who could offer perspective that her husband seemingly could not. His assessment of Curtis's character was brutally direct, believed Curtis's expectations were unreasonably high and that Portia deserved a partner who could appreciate her complexity without constantly judging her past mistakes. The evening at the Brown Dog transformed from innocent commiseration into something far more dangerous as inhibitions dissolved with each round of drinks. Isaiah's charming attentiveness provided the perfect antidote to Curtis's emotional withdrawal, and Portia found herself responding to the validation and understanding that had been absent from her marriage for months. What began as professional courtesy between colleagues evolved into intimate conversation, lingering touches, and ultimately, a night that would forever complicate an already volatile situation. Their encounter was fueled by more than simple physical attraction. It represented Portia's rebellion against the suffocating moral scrutiny she had endured from Curtis, her reclamation of agency in a relationship where she felt constantly diminished, and perhaps most significantly, her unconscious repetition of patterns that had defined her romantic history for decades. Echoes of history, the Trina paternity parallel. The devastating irony of Portia's situation became apparent when she began experiencing symptoms that suggested an unplanned pregnancy several weeks after her night with Isaiah. The timing was particularly cruel. as she and Curtis had shared an intimate reconciliation just days before their final argument, a last desperate attempt to salvage their marriage that now complicated any pregnancy. Timeline beyond recognition. The parallels to her affair with Curtis while married to Marcus Taggart were impossible to ignore. Once again, Portia found herself potentially carrying a child whose paternity was uncertain, trapped between two men who represented different aspects of her emotional needs. The secrecy that had defined her relationship with Curtis during Trina's conception now threatened to repeat itself with Isaiah as the unknown variable in her reproductive equation. Trina Robinson's paternity had remained a closely guarded secret for years, with Portia manipulating DNA test results and maintaining elaborate deceptions to protect what she perceived as her daughter's best interests. The emotional toll of that sustained dishonesty had created fault lines in every relationship Portia attempted to build, contributing to the eventual dissolution of her marriage to Taggart, and now threatening to destroy her union with Curtis through similar patterns of concealment and manipulation. Curtis's oblivious optimism and brewing devastation. Meanwhile, Curtis remained completely unaware of Portia's betrayal with Isaiah, interpreting her recent medical appointments and emotional volatility as stress responses to their marital difficulties rather than signs of potential pregnancy. His natural tendency toward problem-solving and reconciliation led him to believe that their recent intimate encounter represented the beginning of genuine healing rather than the complication of an already impossible situation. Curtis's investment in salvaging their marriage was evident in his increased efforts to demonstrate commitment and understanding. He had begun making subtle changes in his approach to conflict resolution, attempting to create space for Portia's perspective, while managing his own triggers around dishonesty and secret-keeping. The possibility that Portia might be carrying his child represented hope for a fresh start and opportunity to build something new from the ashes of their current dysfunction. His excitement about potential fatherhood was particularly poignant, given his complex relationship with Trina, whom he had come to love as his own daughter despite the years of uncertainty about her biological parentage. The prospect of a child who was unquestionably his felt like redemption for the lost time and complicated emotions that had defined his relationship with Trina during her formative years. The Isaiah factor, predatory charm, and hidden agendas. Dr. Isaiah Gannon's role in this unfolding drama extended far beyond that of innocent bystander or sympathetic friend. His rival in Port Charles had been shrouded in mystery, with only vague references to humanitarian work in East Africa and his friendship with Lucky Spencer, providing context for his presence at General Hospital. However, his rapid integration into the social fabric of the hospital community and his particular attention to the Ashford marriage suggested a more calculated approach to relationship building. Isaiah's background remained deliberately obscured, with potential connections to the notorious Gannon family of Longview, adding layers of intrigue to his motivations. His professional competence and personal charm masked what appeared to be a predatory instinct for identifying and exploiting emotional vulnerabilities in his colleagues. Portia's marital crisis had provided the perfect opportunity for him to establish intimate connection while positioning himself as morally superior to Curtis. The possibility that Isaiah might claim parental rights to any child resulting from his encounter with Portia introduced a wild-card element that could destabilize not only the Ashford marriage, but the entire Robinson-Taggart-Ashford family dynamic. His potential willingness to use a pregnancy as leverage for maintaining connection with Portia suggested manipulative tendencies that extended far beyond simple romantic interest. The DNA dilemma, truth, deception, and consequences. The prospect of another paternity mystery placed Portia in an untenable position that threatened to expose her history of medical ethics violations while potentially destroying multiple relationships simultaneously. Her previous manipulation of Trina's DNA results had established a dangerous precedent for using her medical access to control narrative outcomes. But the stakes in this situation were exponentially higher. Any attempt to conceal or manipulate paternity results would require elaborate deception, involving multiple healthcare professionals, fraudulent documentation, and sustained lying to both Curtis and Isaiah. The psychological toll of maintaining such deception, combined with her existing guilt about the Heather Weber situation and Drew's ongoing blackmail threats, created a perfect storm of emotional instability that could compromise her professional judgment and personal relationships indefinitely. The possibility that Curtis might demand paternity testing based on timing concerns or other suspicions introduced the terrifying prospect of complete exposure. His experience with Trina's paternity revelations had made him acutely sensitive to signs of deception around family relationships, and any inconsistencies in Portia's explanations would likely trigger intense scrutiny that she might be unable to withstand. Family dynamics, Trina's perspective, and generational trauma. Trina Robinson's position in this emerging crisis was particularly complex, as she had finally achieved stability in her relationship with Curtis, only to face the possibility of another family upheaval centered around paternity questions and parental deception. Her recent experiences discovering the truth about her own biological father had created trauma around family secrets that made her especially vulnerable to any repetition of those patterns. The prospect of Curtis and Portia's marriage ending would devastate Trina's sense of family security, particularly if the dissolution involved another pregnancy and paternity mystery that echoed her own origins. Her relationship with Curtis had evolved into genuine father-daughter bonding that transcended biological connection, and the loss of that stability would represent profound emotional regression for a young woman who had already endured significant family trauma. Portia's potential pregnancy also raised questions about Trina's role in any future family structure, particularly if Isaiah emerged as a significant parental figure. The introduction of another potential stepfather figure, combined with the ongoing complications of her relationship with Marcus Daggert and the uncertain status of Curtis's involvement, threatened to create a family dynamic even more complex than the one she had recently learned to navigate. The ultimate revelation, love, betrayal, and redemption. The resolution of Portia's pregnancy mystery promised to serve as a catalyst for either complete family destruction or unexpected redemption, depending on how the various characters chose to respond to the ultimate truth. Curtis's capacity for forgiveness had been tested repeatedly throughout his relationships, and this situation would demand a level of emotional maturity and commitment that exceeded anything he had previously demonstrated. The possibility that the child might be Isaiah's would force Curtis to confront whether his love for Portia could transcend her betrayal, while also requiring him to navigate complex feelings about potentially raising another man's child. His experience with Trina provided a template for this kind of commitment, but the circumstances of active deception rather than historical uncertainty created entirely different emotional challenges. For Portia, the pregnancy represented either an opportunity for complete honesty and relationship repair, or the final step in a pattern of deception that would cost her everything she valued most. Her choice between transparency and manipulation would determine not only her future with Curtis, but also her relationship with Trina and her professional standing in the medical community. The ultimate question remains whether this family can survive another round of secrets, lies, and paternity drama, or whether the accumulated weight of deception will finally destroy the bonds that have held them together through previous crises.